Hi everyone. Welcome to another edition of Terrifying Trios. Did you know that June is National Safety Month? It's true. And did you know that the CDC has a guide for zombie preparedness? That's right. This month's theme is zombies. Sources for this episode include Wikipedia and Google, as well as Hoopla Digital, where I watched our second film. As always, let's start with a content warning. These movies and this month's book contain blood, graphic scenes of violence, including people and animals dying suddenly and horribly, only in most cases to be reanimated, and commit murder and other acts of violence themselves. Viewer and reader discretion is advised. The first movie I'll be talking about today is Night of the Living Dead. Now, this movie is more than just the classic horror film that defined the modern zombie. This movie is more to me than just one of the first horror movies I ever saw. Two of my grandparents are actually buried in the cemetery where the movie begins, and I can remember talking with my grandma just a few months ago about how creepy she found it, knowing that her name was carved onto a plaque in that cemetery, her date of birth already there, her date of death not yet written. If you've never seen this movie, the opening credits feature a woman named Barbara and her brother Johnny driving from Pittsburgh to visit a grave. Johnny is soon attacked by a strange man, who viewers quickly suspect is undead. Our heroes don't have this foreknowledge. And since Johnny had the car keys, Barbara is soon left to flee on foot. She finds a seemingly empty house and discovers a corpse upstairs. Later, she meets Ben, who drives up to the house at nightfall, and he begins to barricade the doors and windows, while Barbara looks on, mutely at first, but eventually she's simply unconscious. Later, Ben and Barbara find that 5 other people have been hiding in the basement of the house this whole time. One is a couple with a child who feels sick after being bitten by some strange person earlier in the day. When the group is finally able to get the TV working, they learn that the dead have risen and are eating the flesh of the living. They are instructed where to go for help, so the group tries to leave the house where they have found shelter, with disastrous results. Night of the Living Dead was made for less than $200,000 and has since grossed around $30 million. It's the stuff of low-budget horror movie dreams. This film builds tension and delivers some groundbreaking scary scenes with chilling effectiveness. It shows a little girl becoming a murderous ghoul who kills and feeds on her parents. It features a young couple consumed by fire in a truck, and then consumed literally by a crowd of zombies who eat them after they're killed in an explosion. And in Chekhov's gun fashion, Barbara's brother Johnny returns in the finale, leading to his sister's demise. This movie was released in 1968, and the fact that Ben is played by Dwayne Jones, who is black, makes the conclusion all the more heartbreaking. George Romero stated that he didn't cast Jones as Ben to make a statement. He was simply the best actor that Romero and his crew knew. But of course, since this movie was released just a few months after the death of Martin Luther King Jr., Ben's death is more than just a hero striving valiantly, only to become a Hamlet-like figure in the end. Though he survives the Night of Terror and escapes the zombie horde, Ben is ultimately killed by police, which is sadly as familiar a tragedy now as it was over half a century ago. Ultimately, this film is the archetype of almost all zombie fiction. In the end, the most dangerous part of a zombie apocalypse is never the zombies. It's always other humans. Our next film is Train to Busan, a Korean horror film in which a father and daughter are on a train when South Korea experiences a zombie outbreak. The daughter, Soo-an, is initially more observant than her dad, who only agreed to take her on this trip to see her mother for her birthday, after he bought her a gift that she already had. And like many kids in horror movies, even when she sees something strange happen, like when a man is attacked by a zombie at the train station, her observations aren't acknowledged. Her dad is asleep in this scene, and at this point you get the sense that he might not listen to her, even if she said anything. Of course, as the movie goes on, the dad, Seok-woo, grows as a person and father, as he goes from being a workaholic to fighting to protect his daughter, especially after he learns that the company he works for is connected to the chemical leak that caused the zombie outbreak. This film contains a lot of classic characters in your typical zombie and/or disaster movie. So you have a team of young athletes. Luckily, they're baseball players, so at least they have weapons. You have two older women, sisters, traveling together. The staff on the train, who try to hold things together even as they rapidly spiral out of control. A pregnant woman. And, of course, a rich jerk who makes a terrible situation even worse through his selfishness. And when you look past the horror of how quickly people become zombies once bitten, and how fast these zombies can move, something I really enjoyed in this film was how clearly the actors relish pretending to become ravenous monsters. They writhe, they snarl, they jump and scramble to grab the nearest human. And watching them made me think that this must have been a fun movie to make, though I'm sure the cramped quarters of the trains complicated many shots. There's some lovely and haunting imagery in this film, especially in the early scenes that are mostly quiet, effectively building tension as you wait for what's coming. Ashes falling like snow, and a deer that returns to life after being hit by a truck. Its milky eye and startled dash away from the road set the stage for the suddenness of the frenzy to come. Night of the Living Dead is a slow burn sort of film, and the zombies, as a rule, move very slowly. But Train to Busan is full of staccato bursts of fast zombie attacks that keep you on the edge of your seat. Or if you're like me, you might have to pause the movie frequently when you start yelling at characters to run. The setting of a train adds to the claustrophobic feeling of being surrounded by potential zombies. And while many characters make cruel but believable choices, abandoning those they believe to be infected, others bravely sacrifice themselves to give other passengers time to escape. I just recently enjoyed this movie through our Hoopla Digital app, and while I won't spoil the end, I will say that, as in most zombie films, there are many close calls for our heroes, many gory deaths, and ultimately, few survivors. This month's book is Rot and Ruin, the first in a series of young adult novels by Jonathan Marbury, veteran author of zombie fiction. In this novel, we meet Benny Amura, who, at 15, lives inside a fortified city with billions of zombies roaming the countryside outside. Benny's 15th birthday means it's time for him to get a job, or lose rations. And after trying several paths, he finds himself apprenticed to his brother Tom, a famed bounty hunter. Benny blames Tom for their parents' deaths years ago, when zombies first appeared. As a bounty hunter, Tom kills zombies for money. Not indiscriminately, but rather he is paid by families who employ him to kill relatives that have become zombies and are left wandering their former homes. This is, Tom emphasizes, an act of mercy. Not so much for the unconscious zombie, but for the family members who are unhappy knowing that their loved one is out there, able to infect and kill humans, reduced to a thoughtless corpse. Though it takes time, Benny can begin to see his brother's point of view by the end of the book. Saving his parents and his little brother wasn't an option all those years ago, and the two do their best to be a family and learn more about the world outside, especially after the sight of a plane in the sky changes everything they thought they knew about their world. Rot and Ruin, like most zombie fiction, shines a spotlight on the best and worst of humanity. There's teamwork and generosity, but there's also terrible violence, greed, and the kind of mercenary behavior that you might typically associate with bounty hunters. Tom Amura is an exception in having rules for how he hunts and striving to conduct himself ethically and morally. If you're looking for a series that explores the aftermath of a zombie apocalypse and the struggle to both hold on to your humanity while rebuilding some kind of society, as opposed to the beginning of an outbreak, as in this month's two films, check out Rot and Ruin. And remember, while death and dying, and possibly zombies, are inevitable, while we're alive, we can still choose to treat each other better than people in zombie movies treat each other. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you again soon.